Hi, here's Bob Hatton. Here are some encouraging words for you. I've got a scarf here which my daughter knitted for me as a Christmas present. It's just been finished, so I've not worn it yet. I'm waiting for the cold weather to come and then wrap it around my neck and see if it keeps me warm, but it's wool, so very pleased with that. Now, why am I talking to you about this scarf? Because I want to talk to you about knitting today. Yeah, knitting. You heard right. You think, where do you find anything about knitting in the Bible? Well, just be a little bit patient and I'll try to explain. We are talking about the story of Saul of Tarsus, who was a persecutor of the church. He'd just been converted. He was struck blind, and he went to the city of Damascus, and God sent a disciple to him, and this disciple, a man called Ananias, he prayed with him. He regained his sight, but also spiritual sight. All the stuff that he'd learned at theological college, it all made sense because it all pointed to Jesus. And he was also baptized in water, and we spoke about water baptism yesterday. Now, I'd just like to read something from Acts chapter 9, and we'll start at verse 19. And after taking some food, he regained strength. And Saul spent several days with the disciples in Damascus. At once he began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. You see, this is where his the things that he'd learned at theological college. He knew his Hebrew. He knew all about the Old Testament prophets, and now it all makes sense, pointing to Jesus. So he's proclaiming that Jesus is the Son of God to Jewish people who also were quite versed in the Old Testament scriptures. Now it goes on, and it says, and all those who heard him were astonished and asked, "Isn't he the man who caused havoc in Jerusalem among those who call on this name, the name of Jesus? And hasn't he come here to take them as prisoners to the chief priests?" Yet Saul, this is verse 22, yet Saul grew more and more powerful and baffled the Jews living in Damascus by proving that Jesus is the Christ. He proved that Jesus is the Christ. And the Greek word for proved is the word sumbibazo, a strange word, sumbibazo. And that also means knitted. He knitted things together for them. He brought a bit from here and a bit from there, and he put it together so that they could see, and they were astonished about what he was saying. Now, when I was a young pastor, I mean a very young pastor, I just started. I'd only been in the church, I think, for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. And one Sunday morning after our service, I was feeling good. I thought I'd preached well. And there was a young guy there, and he introduced himself, and he told me that he was a student of psychology. And he decided that he was going to write a paper about our church, and he wanted to make a survey, a psychological survey of the people, and you know, what kind of people are they who believe this, what the pastor's preaching. And when I heard that, I remember fear struck very deep in my heart. So at Bible school, we'd learned a little bit of psychology. I must admit, I didn't understand very much about it, but I got my psychology books out and I studied all that week, and I got a real good sermon together that I'm sure would have convicted every student of psychology who would come to a church service. The problem was that this guy wasn't there on Sunday, and thinking back, I don't think many people in the church understood a word I was talking about, and to be honest, I didn't really understand it either. But that's not the point, because if it's not a student of psychology, it's a student of history, it's a student of something else, and we can try to give an answer, a very academic answer to all these people, and we would never ever finish studying, which might not be a bad thing, but that's not really what convicts people of sin and convicts people that Jesus is the Christ. Paul did it a different way. He was a brilliant guy. But when he proclaimed about Jesus and he's speaking one-on-one to these people, he began to knit. I remember my mother knitting. I remember my auntie knitting. They used to do it in the living room. Sometimes it made quite a noise as the knitting needles were striking one another. And I remember my auntie, she had false teeth, and they were also making a noise as she was knitting as well. So memories come alive when I think of this. But they're bringing all kinds of things together. This kind of wool, that kind of wool, this color of wool. Sometimes they're changing the colors. Sometimes in the pattern there's a hole for this or that. And I remember my mother made so many pullovers for me, and when our children were very small, she also made cardigans and stuff for them with various patterns in and so on and so forth. Now, this is what Paul did. Paul didn't come and said, listen now, I've got the answer. I tell you, this is what you must believe. But rather, he by proving, by this knitting, he would be using a kind of method that was used in those days. It was a recognized method of teaching, this knitting, and he would do it by asking questions. He would ask the people questions, and that's something that we can do if we want to share our faith. That is something that we can do with people who don't yet know Jesus. We don't come with somebody who's haughty and knows everything and I've got the answer to every question, but rather let's ask the people questions. I remember that I was traveling on an airplane with a friend. I was sitting next to the window, the friend was sitting next to me, and there was another guy. He was from Sweden. It turned out he was an officer in the Swedish army, and my friend started to talk to him. And I remember the first thing when they introduced one another and we just had a little bit of small talk, then he asked him, he said, have you ever read the Bible? And then they started talking about the Bible. This guy hadn't read the Bible, but my friend then explained some things to him and then kept asking him questions. Sometimes we ask people, do you believe in that there's a God? And they say, no, I don't believe in God at all. And then a little bit later we ask the next question, have you ever prayed? And say, have I ever prayed? I pray often. Yeah, but you don't believe that there's a God, so who do you pray to? And then we get the chance to explain things, not by coming with haughty, this is what's right, that's what's wrong, you're living wrong, I'm living right, you live like this, but by asking questions, by knitting something together. Now, one daughter, she knitted me this scarf, and we've got another daughter who lives with us, and the corona time has been a little bit had some time on her hands. And one thing that she started to do when she's free, she got some jigsaw puzzles, and she starts to putting them together. And this is very, very interesting. You've got to make sure one piece fits to another. And sometimes you think you're getting a picture together and then you find out the pieces are not fitting. So I wondered if I shouldn't do that as well. And we've got some jigsaw puzzles that are left over from the time when our kids were small and they live with us. But the thing is, they're quite old, and over a period of time, we've lost some of the pieces. They probably got sucked up in the vacuum cleaner or something, I don't know. And then there's some pieces from other puzzles have been mixed up with them. So it gets frustrating if you start to put this together and you find out there's some pieces missing. And then you find out that there are other pieces there that don't quite fit. They're okay when they're in the box. Everything is all mixed up, and it looks good, and it's a challenge, and I could do that if I wanted. But actually, there's the pieces from all different kinds of puzzles. Now, what we have, our view in life, we call that a world. A world view that we have, and everybody has a world view. But as we start to think about things, I think people during our time, they don't really think about their eternal destiny because they're too busy thinking about their holiday destiny. But maybe with Corona time, not many people will going holiday on holiday in summer. Maybe this is a special time when we can think about the eternal destiny. We start to do the puzzle, putting things together. This is what I believe about God. This is what I believe about Jesus. Because years ago, I had lessons when I was going to be confirmed in the church, and we used to go to have religion religious knowledge at school, and also I've been to church one or two times. But not only that, I've listened to what some of the celebrities have been speaking about the meaning of life. And then we once went to holiday in Thailand, and we visited some Buddhist temples. And besides that, I've been to India, and I've seen something about the Hindus. And down the road, there's some Muslims live there, and we've also had talks with them, and they've told us a little bit about their religion. So I think we have a bit from everybody. But as you start to do this puzzle and you find out there's bits from everybody, then you find out that there's gaps missing, there's stuff missing, and there's pieces that don't fit there. And that what is often missing, even in Christian jigsaw puzzles, is the person of Jesus. And Paul could proclaim that he is the Son of God. Now, this is a challenge for us to have a look at our world view to see if everything is there that we need. It's also a challenge that as we are sharing our faith with other people, that we begin to knit things together, bring them together so that it makes one whole picture. Sometimes when the ladies, or I suppose it's ladies who do knitting more than anything, when they're knitting, then they leave a hole, but then afterwards something else comes in there, and we look at and we think something is missing, but the person doing the knitting knows exactly what to go in there, and that what's missing is Jesus. Sometime later, Paul went to city of Athens, and he was asked to speak to the Greek philosophers in the Areopag, in the where they used to gather and would listen to all kinds of ideas. And he said he'd been walking around and he'd seen an altar dedicated to the unknown God. And that's what he says there when he sees that. He says there's something that you don't know, but actually you're looking for. And he says that's who I'm proclaiming to you. That's Jesus. So with these thoughts, I'll leave you for today and for the weekend. Have a good time, have a good day. God bless you, and I'll see you again next week. Your Bob Hatton.